The keys to beating Kansas on senior day, and there's going to be a lot of keys to this.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. The show is brought to you today by Nissan, the 2025 all-new Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada team of the week later in the episode. That is awesome. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about Arizona, Kansas. We are going to talk about the keys to victory here. We are going to talk about basically everything that goes into all of this. And again, what a win would mean, what a loss would mean, all of that. But first, obviously, Arizona playing Kansas, going in there on senior day, it's generally not the easiest spot in the world. Now, to give you a little bit of an example, Bill Self is 29-2 on senior day, and those two losses were at Oral Roberts. So that kind of gives you the hint of where Arizona is in the grand scheme of this. Kansas, he does not lose. He is very clear about this. He will not lose on senior day. But this is also not your vintage Kansas team. I think going into the season, everybody was like, "Man, that's going to be the best team in the country." And there was a lot of reasons to believe that. The first one is that Kansas is really, really good. You've got a loaded team. At least on paper, and you had some transfers that looked like they were going to be really good. Now, the holdovers obviously were, you got Hunter Dickinson, who, while limited, is still very good. I don't think there's really any doubt about it. Hunter Dickinson is a good basketball player. He's just limited. But again, at the end of the day, he's going to be 16-9, 16-10, whatever the case may be. DeJuan Harris is much the same. DeJuan Harris is not going to be an All-American, but he's a defensive pest. He's also somebody that is a very good assist guy. He just really can't score. But overall, he's a player that you want to have on your team nonetheless. He is good. Then you've also got KJ Adams. Again, kind of come into here as well. KJ Adams is he's a very good player, but he's also limited. The one thing that these guys all can't do is none of them can get their shots on their own, and that's been a problem for them for a long time. That's going to continue to be a problem for them this entire season. They just can't really get their shots, is what it is. Okay, so when it comes down to where this team really is, I think you could also make the case too that you're also at a stage too where the guys that you brought in, they just aren't that good. AJ Storr, I thought bringing in AJ Storr was going to be a huge addition for them. Thought that would be a very nice addition for them. That has turned out to be nothing. AJ Storr has been basically unplayable. You would imagine he'll be somewhere else next year, but he was one of the very top players on the entire market, and going into the season, that's an issue. And you thought that he would be probably a 14, 15 point per game guy. I think that you were hoping that he would replace Kevin McCullough's contributions. No, there's been none of that. He's not come close to that. Zeke Mayo has been okay. Now, again, Zeke Mayo, I think some of the Kansas fans are being absolute turds when it comes to him, basically complaining about everything and sending him very, very mean remarks. That is not cool. And honestly, with Zeke, he's a solid player. He's not great, but anytime you bring in somebody like that, though, I don't know that you should necessarily expect somebody, to come in from I don't know, a mid-major school, no matter how good they are, and become that absolute difference maker. Again, he's been like 12-4-5 or 12-5-4, however you want to slice it. Good, not great, but again, I don't really know that you should have been expecting a ton more from him. And then obviously you've got the 5-star kid off the bench as well. He's got a lot of talent. I think he probably should play more. And then Rylan Griffin, another guy. You brought him in from Alabama. Rylan Griffin has not been nearly what they thought. I think they thought that Griffin would be, a 10, 11 point per game guy. Another guy that's basically gone a good percentage of the season without being playable. And then, not mentioning then an El Marco Jackson or someone like that. Either way, it's just been a team that hasn't been good enough. That's just the best way that I could put it, and it is not a daunting task to beat them. Now, again, going into Fog Allen is going to be obviously a tough situation, but it's something that Arizona can absolutely do. So let's look at some of these matchups then. Jaden Bradley and DeJuan Harris. You could make that a push. I would lean Bradley a little bit more, mainly because Bradley gives me a little bit more scoring impact than DeJuan Harris does. Harris is a solid player, but I don't look at Harris and say that that's something that Arizona can't deal with. I would prefer Jaden Bradley. Then you look at that shooting guard position, Zeke Mayo and Caleb Love. Say whatever you want about Caleb Love. I know that Caleb Love is a lightning rod. I get all of that, but Caleb Love, at the end of the day, is still a better player, and he is a more impactful player than somebody like Zeke Mayo or whoever you want to really throw in there at that two guard spot. I think again, I'm gonna miss Caleb Love. I know there's a lot of people that are saying, Mike, you're crazy. Why would you miss Caleb Love? I am going to miss Caleb Love. Sorry, no apologies, as the kids would, or sorry, not sorry, as the kids would say. Then up front too, this is a game you'd love to see KJ Lewis get back on track. KJ has struggled of late. Now again, this past game, he was getting downhill more. There's still 4, 5, 6 minute stretches where you're just kind of wondering what exactly he's doing out on the court. But overall, he's got to get down. If he's attacking the basket, he becomes a very difficult player for Arizona to cover. Period. Point blank. That just is what it is. He becomes very, very difficult for teams to cover. Now, with a player like Anthony Del Orso in this game, I don't know how this is going to work exactly, because Kansas has a very good defense. Kansas defensively is actually very, very good. The problem for Kansas, though, is that they can't really score, and I think that's kind of where you're like, all right, why can't Kansas score? And that's because we kind of went over that in the past, that they just really have anybody that can just take over a game. Now watch, they're going to probably take over the game and destroy Arizona from 3-point range, etc. But defensively, they're tough. Defensively, there's no doubt about it. They're a tough basketball team, and they're a team as well that if they get going, they can really run off some. They can run off some good play. They can run off some. Defensively, they can play really well. The problem, though, is that, like I said, they just can't score. Arizona, offensively, has a better basketball team than Arizona. Yes, has a better basketball team than Kansas. There's just no doubt about it. But I think at the end of the day, though, Arizona is also going to allow Kansas to shoot a bunch of wide open shots, which is less than ideal. So obviously you've got that. Then I think you've got to look at a little bit then about who could be some of these X factors here for Arizona, and that X factor is always going to be Caleb Love. If Caleb Love plays like an All-American, Arizona can beat any team in the country. If Caleb Love doesn't play well, then Arizona can lose to most teams, and we've kind of seen both of those. We've kind of seen both of those endeavors this season, where Caleb Love, it's a Caleb Love game or it's not a Caleb Love game, and you just kind of wonder, and you're just kind of like, all right, well, guess we're going to find that one out. Then up in the front court, then. This is where it gets very interesting for me. KJ Adams is a solid basketball player. He's a very good defensive basketball player. He is incredibly limited offensively. Like, he's not going to shoot. When you watch him try to attack the basket, it's not natural. It doesn't look good. He's a decent passer, but again, Kansas has a lot of high-level role players, and that's where that's kind of where it's at. Kansas has a lot of high-level role players, but again, they don't really have guys that can score the basketball. Tobe Awaka in this game, this is going to be an interesting one, because unless Kansas has the big man in there, the 5-star, they don't have a lot of guys that can. They don't have a lot of guys that can really, cause problems for Tobe, and that Tobe is going to be. I think Tobe is going to be just fine against. I think Tobe is going to be just fine against somebody like, KJ Adams, because of the girth. the amount of girth that KJ Adams or that Tobe Awaka will dispense on KJ Adams is going to be a problem. And I don't know that Arizona's going or I don't know that Kansas is going to be able to deal with that. I think Tobe is going to have a very, very nice game in this game. And I think that he is again, because I don't think Kansas has the length to really be able to to bother him. That's something that I'm very much looking forward to, is there in that length and everything that he's got going for him. Now, there's going to be a real interesting matchup up front. Very interesting. But first, nothing more interesting than Nissan, my friends. Nissan. Okay, here's the deal. Now, here's the deal with Nissan. This Armada, oh, very nice. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and all new 2025 Nissan. Each week, our college of basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from the other top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, and these guys showcase the sheer power needed to push their team forward. I am going to go with Houston on that. I like Houston. Now, again, Houston's got some problems. I get it. Houston's not great, but Houston is a good basketball team that I enjoy watching because defensively they are going to do really, really good work. Now, here's the cool thing about it is that when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Houston Cougars did this week. Houston, again, they're going to be a number one seed. I love how Kelvin Sampson plays, and there's nothing better than that. Go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. And here's the other one, too. It's clear that the player of the week is out here already and conquer the road ahead with the confidence, just like you can in the new Nissan Armada or any Nissan outstanding vehicles. Again, here's the deal. Take the Nissan Armada Rogue or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Get in there, ladies and gentlemen. Get in there. Nissan. And again, Houston, your team of the week. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the front court and where this is at. The front court is Henry Vasar's got to continue to play well. Henry Vasar's got to continue to basically be a monster in that he's got to be able to dunk around the basket. He's got to be able to play physical. He's got to be able to play strong. He's got to throw them bows. He's got to do a lot of different things. And if he can do that, then Arizona is going to be in very, very good shape. Excuse me. So there's obviously that. When it comes to this team, though, I think you're also looking at it and you're saying, where is what do we need out of Henry Vasar? I think that you need dunks, you need 3-point shots, and you need blocked shots. You need a lot of that from Mr. Henry Vasar, and he's going against a guy in Hunter Dickinson who is not. Again, Hunter Dickinson is a solid basketball player, but he is very limited offensively. There's not a lot that, again, I think back to when Arizona played Michigan and Christian Coloco basically destroyed him. That's kind of who Hunter Dickinson is. He can feast on teams, but if you're going against a good team, Hunter Dickinson's probably going to struggle. And I would expect him to have his hands full with Henry, and I think Henry is going to do a very, very nice job as that as well. I'm excited to see exactly how this does play out for Arizona. I do think with this team, though, you also know for a fact that this is going to be I think you also know that this is going to be a team where you're like, interesting. Henry Vasar, you look up and you're like, whoa, he's got 14.7 rebounds and a couple blocks. That's just kind of what he does, though. Sometimes he can have really big plays, and then sometimes you're like, interesting. But either way, the stat sheet generally catches up with you at the end of the game, and he looks really good doing it. Now, coming off the bench, not a Trey Townsend game, but we need to be very clear about something. I need to give Trey Townsend some credit. beaten up Trey Townsend a lot on this show, obviously. But Trey, I thought, played pretty well against ASU. Didn't play a ton in the second half, obviously. But overall, he was like I said, he's been a pretty good. I think he's been pretty good for. I thought he's been pretty good for Arizona, and I think with I think the one thing too that if like I said, if you can steal 12 to 14 minutes from Trey, that's pretty much all you want, because anything more than that, it's going to be it's probably going to be diminishing returns. And so again, 12 to 14 minutes, and then I think you kind of just go from there, and you just kind of take your chances. So we will, like I said, we'll see how that plays out. Then need Carter Bryant to need Carter Bryant to basically make 3-pointers. He is a guy that you watch Carter, and you can just tell that he is there's going to be games where it's a game for him. One thing that I think we have found out, though, is that he's more physically I think he's more physically ready as the season goes on, and defensively he's still a hacker. He's going to hack. He's going to do that. That's just the way it is. There's really no other way around it. He's going to hack players, but when you watch him, though, you can also tell that there is an upside to him that nobody else on this team possesses. If you can get a second year out of Carter Bryant, then game on, baby. And we'll see. Like I said, we'll see how that plays out. He's probably going to be a late first-round pick, but if he comes back, he's a top 12, top 13 pick, and you're like, man, all right, let's bring this. Let's do this one. And I think there's every reason in the world to believe that he would be an All-American. I love Carter Bryant. I love his potential. In this game, too, I like him. If Trey Townsend's out there, you got to stagger him, and you got to have Carter Bryant out there as well, because here's the thing. Trey Townsend doesn't rebound. We know that. But if you've got Henry Vasar, or if whoever you've got at that other big man spot, and you got Carter Bryant at the 3, Carter Bryant can help out at the 3, and that's something that will that can really mean something. Now, I think something that you got to look at too is you got to say, all right, so what does this team need to do to win? And the big thing is they've got to be able to defend. Now, listen, Kansas, we just spent a whole time talking about how Kansas isn't a great 3-point shooting team. They're not, and they're not a great scoring team. But the problem, though, still is that Arizona gives up too many just easy shots. And you saw that against ASU, giving up 3-pointer after 3-pointer, giving up layups. Arizona, when they don't play hard, they can lose to absolutely any team in the country. And that's something that we've seen. And I think that's something that's frustrating for Arizona fans, is that you see that and you're like, that's just somewhat annoying when in this entire endeavor. Okay, so I think is another thing too that we got that's also going to be interesting in all this is where is Arizona then? If Arizona wins this game, what would that mean for their seeding? Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Locked on, your team every day. Okay, now, where exactly then, if Arizona were to win this game, where would this be? I think Arizona locks themselves in as a 4 seed at that point. I don't think there's any way around it. I think that they're a solid 4 seed. And honestly, when I look at it, I'm like, all right, not only are they a 4 seed, I think that they're a team that has a chance to get a 3 then at that point. Again, it's going to be hard, but if let's say you win a couple games, you knock off a couple teams, you beat Kansas again, or you beat Iowa State, or you beat Houston, or whatever the case may be, then, you start looking at it and you're like, okay, cool. Arizona's in a good spot. And I think that that's something that we should all embrace. We should all relish. We should all cherish, because Arizona at that stage would be in a very, very good spot. Now, Arizona then, where are they when it comes to, how I think this team's going to play out? I think Arizona's going to win this game. I know there's really no reason to believe that. I get it. but I think Arizona is going to win this game. I think they're going to beat Kansas. I think Arizona is better than Kansas. Now, again, I realize it's senior night, get all that. But I also think that Arizona is just a better team than Kansas, and I just don't think. But if Kansas were to win, it wouldn't surprise me in the least. I realize that's like the most massive hedge of massive hedge, but it is it's also a situation where you're like, well, I'm just going to go with it. If Arizona wins that one, though, I think they're a 3 seed. Here's what I want. My guy Eric Cohen made this point. You want to get Arizona. You want to get Arizona. How do I put this? You want them to be a team where you're like, I want to stay away from that 4 seed by any means necessary. I want to stay away from that 4 seed, and if you could stay away from that 4 seed, then that's good because I don't want to have to play Duke or I don't want to have to play Auburn or something in the Sweet 16. That's kind of that's a big part of it. I don't want to play those teams because I don't think Arizona could beat them. That's kind of honestly just my opinion. You got to be able to do that. You got to be able to win that game. And if if you do that, you get a 3 seed. That's great. But you're going to have to go through Houston. You're probably going to have to go through Iowa State or whatever the case may be. That's less than ideal, obviously, but it is what it is. But Arizona's locked in on that 3 line in the Big 12 tournament, which means you get the double bye. You love having the double bye because then you get to watch teams get really tired playing each other, and you're like, okay, cool. We can pick up the carcass of the remaining teams. So there's obviously that. Now, as far as what that would mean, then the Big 12's a gauntlet. I've loved this first year in the Big 12. Not only have I loved this first year in the Big 12, I've also looked at it and said this has been a very, very this has also been a very, very nice nice season for Arizona, and this has been something where you're like, okay, cool. Out of conference was obviously awful, but if you don't have the out of conference situation, you don't you look at it and you're kind of like, okay, the in conference was fine. And I think Arizona fans should be okay with that, considering where everything was coming into that. But again, you can't really put both of those together. Houston is clearly the best team in the conference, and not only is Houston the best team in the conference, it's a team that you just watch them and you're kind of like, all right, well, yeah, they're just better. They're more physical. They're incredibly well coached. They've got a team that Milos Uzan is much better than I think anybody could have probably projected, especially what you saw early on in the season. He hasn't really been a step down from Jamal Shed. He's been a monster. He's been very, very good. Iowa State is just a bad matchup for Arizona because they can pressure the ball. Arizona doesn't have a lot of ball handlers, and that's played itself out. Texas Tech, I think, is just a little bit better. I think Arizona is the 4th best team in the conference. And I feel fine saying that. I really do. I don't have a real problem saying that because, again, you watch these teams, you watch how they play, and you're kind of like, all right, that's just a bad matchup for Arizona. So that's kind of where it's at. All right, I'm predicting an Arizona victory, though. I think Arizona is going to beat Kansas, and I think that Arizona then locks in a 4 seed, and you go into the NCAA tournament and, or the Big 12 tournament, and you're kind of like, okay, can we get a 3 seed out of this? What do we need to do? And like I said, then I think you just kind of go from there. Now, tomorrow, it's going to be all recruiting. We're going to talk 2025, 2026, and 2027. All Arizona recruiting. You got a lot of names in there you need to know about. You need to know, obviously, about Braden Burries. What's he up to? You need to know about Koa Peak. You've already got Dwayne Aristod. You've got Bryce James. You got Andre Iguodala Jr., who I think Arizona would take. You've also got then in the 2026 class, you got your Cam Williams, you got your Cam Holmes, you got your Elijah Williams, you've got your players like that. And then in 2027, you got Jason Gardner Jr. You've got you've got other guys, your Bruce Branches of the world. There's a lot of kids, especially in state, that are going to be really, really good for Arizona if they can get them. It's going to be imperative that Tommy offers these kids early. Again, and Nikina Alozi is another one that you're like, okay. Bring him. That would be very, very nice as well. But So again, Arizona, I like Arizona to beat Kansas, but I realize it's the ultimate hedge. I would not be surprised at all if Arizona loses either. But tomorrow, all recruiting, because again, and next week, we got the Big 12 tournament coming in here. So there it is. But on that note, though, very, very much appreciate you making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. And again, Locked On, your team every day. Bear down and back the A.